When my family tried to completely erase me from their lives and burn Grandpa's inheritance, I discovered that the real money and documents were hidden from them. From my laptop, I learned about forged signatures and plans to sell my company in my absence. But Grandpa had left me keys, letters, and instructions that revealed the path to the true inheritance. Now I have control over everything. And it's time to reclaim my name and property. Let me start from the beginning. I hadn't set foot in that office since Grandpa Gideon's health began to fail, and even now I was only there because I'd promised him I would come. The conference room smelled faintly of lemon oil and old paper, the kind of scent that lingers in wood and seems to hold on to secrets. My mom adjusted her pearl necklace with a hand so perfectly manicured it could have been on a magazine cover, while my dad sat stiff in his chair, arms crossed like he was bracing for a fight. Lydia, polished as always, had on a flawless cream blouse that looked too perfect for a day like this, her half-smile suggesting she'd already claimed her victory. Mr. Calder, Grandpa's lawyer for over 28 years, cleared his throat and opened a folder with slow, deliberate care before speaking. "We are gathered to honor the final wishes of Gideon Fletcher," he said, locking eyes with me before reading the allocations. "To Lydia Fletcher," he began, "the Jackson Hole cabin and the vintage 1962 Gibson guitar." Lydia blinked, clearly expecting her list to be longer. "To Rowan and Elise Fletcher," his voice went on, "the heirloom grandfather clock, select vinyl records, and a $12,500 charitable gift in their name." My mother let out a sound somewhere between a scoff and a gag. "That can't be right," she muttered, but Mr. Calder didn't so much as flinch. He turned the page. "To Adele Fletcher, my granddaughter, my confidant, I leave my entire financial estate totaling $37,800,000. The room went silent. "What?" my father barked. Lydia's jaw tightened, and my mother shot to her feet, face flushed. "She abandoned us. She doesn't deserve." But Mr. Calder kept reading, not even glancing up. "This will was signed, notarized, and filed by Gideon Fletcher personally 4 months before his passing." They didn't hear the rest. My father quickly took the check that Mr. Calder had just handed me and examined it carefully, as if he doubted its authenticity. "You think this buys you back in?" he sneered. Before I could respond, he struck a match, and I watched as the edges curled and blackened, flames racing across the paper. My mother tore the envelope from my hands, shredding it until Grandpa's handwriting drifted away in pieces. "This is what happens when you betray your family," she hissed. I didn't flinch, didn't plead. I just smiled. A small, steady smile that never reached my eyes, because they had no idea what they'd actually destroyed, and they didn't notice the envelope still hidden inside my coat. The last real conversation I'd had with my father was years ago when he told me, "If you walk out that door, you don't walk back in." I was 20, and I just turned down a full ride to his alma mater's business program so I could enroll in a tiny liberal arts college upstate to study visual design. He'd called it a hobby with delusions. My mom didn't argue. She just stood silently behind him, lips pressed so tightly they almost disappeared. 2 weeks later, I came home for Thanksgiving and found my bedroom stripped bare. No bed, no desk, not even the bookshelf where Grandpa used to hide little notes for me. In its place sat 2 gray armchairs, a fake orchid, and a framed print of a lighthouse I'd never seen. The nameplate on the door no longer said Adele. It now read Guest Room A. Lydia passed me in the hallway, smirking. "Don't be so dramatic. It's not like you were using it," she said. "They didn't cut me off all at once. It started with little things like missing birthday cards or ignored phone calls. Then almost 1 month, the rent check from my parents just never arrived. When I called my mom to ask, she sighed and said, 'Actions have consequences, Clara. You wanted independence, now you have it.' I would have lost my apartment if Grandpa hadn't stepped in, wiring the exact amount I needed just 3 days later without asking a single question. After that, he sent money quietly, never too much, just enough to keep the lights on and the heat running, always accompanied by letters in his shaky but beautiful handwriting. He never criticized me for leaving, never asked me to come back, but between every line I could feel it, he saw me. The last letter I ever got from him came 4 weeks before he passed. It said only, 'Survival isn't weakness. It's the first proof of strength.' I carried that note in my wallet through every rejection, every lonely holiday, every night I pretended I didn't care. I still had it with me, even now, with the ashes of the fake check cooling on the table in front of me as my hand slid into my coat to touch the real envelope. The first thing I did when I got home was lock the door and kick off my heels. My legs were trembling, not from fear, but from holding myself together for too long. I laid my coat on the kitchen chair and pulled out the envelope Grandpa had given me a month before he died. He'd slipped it to me in a quiet booth at Hillstone Diner, wrapped in a cloth napkin like it was some sacred relic. "Don't open it," he'd said, "unless they burn it." And they had. I broke the wax seal, unfolded the contents, and found a check almost identical to the one they'd destroyed earlier. Same amount, same signature, but printed in tiny red letters at the bottom were the words, "Non-negotiable copy." My hand stayed steady as I flipped the check over and found a small USB drive taped to the back, along with a short note in Grandpa's blocky handwriting. "Let them burn it, then open the real file." I slid the drive into my laptop. No passwords, no loading screens, just one folder labeled Inheritance. Inside was a single PDF. A completed trust transfer form, signed, witnessed, and filed through a law firm I'd never heard of. The account number ended with digits I'd known since I was a kid, Grandpa's birthday in reverse. The money was real. The transfer had already gone through. Weeks ago. The check they'd torched wasn't a fake, it was bait. I leaned back in my chair, the silence in my apartment pressing in soft and heavy. This wasn't about them anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. Grandpa hadn't just trusted me, he'd mapped out their reactions step by step, and now I was following his plan. The next morning, out of habit, I went to check my bank balance, maybe just to reassure myself. The screen blinked twice before an error popped up. Account not found. I tried another card. Declined. I typed in my login again, slower this time, as if precision could fix it. Nothing. At first, I told myself it had to be a fraud lock or security flag from yesterday's chaos. But when I called the bank, the man on the line sounded uneasy. "I'm sorry, Ms. Rivera," he said, typing on keys I couldn't see. "Our system has your account marked inactive. Deceased, actually." My mouth went dry. "That's a mistake." He hesitated. "It's certified by the registrar's office. Dated 2 weeks ago." I hung up before my voice cracked. An hour later, the DMV confirmed it. The woman behind the glass frowned at her monitor, then looked at me with a flicker of pity. "You're flagged as legally deceased. Death certificate filed under your full name, Adele Fletcher. You'll need to request a correction. That can take months." I didn't answer. I just stepped out into the cold, feeling like the edges of reality had peeled back, and nothing was solid anymore. Across the street, a woman stood half-hidden beneath bare winter trees, her sunglasses too big for the gray sky. A pale blue silk scarf hung loosely around her neck, the same scarf my mother swore the dry cleaners had lost 3 years ago. She didn't smile. She didn't look away. She was watching. I slipped into the flow of pedestrians, moving at a measured pace, not rushing but not stopping either. When I turned the corner, she was gone. Back in my apartment, I pulled out the box where I kept old letters from Grandpa, laying them out like clues on the table. This wasn't just about cutting me out, they were erasing me, carefully and completely, with someone monitoring to make sure it worked. I took out the USB again and opened the inheritance folder. Somewhere in there had to be my next move. The brass key had been in my nightstand for years, wrapped in the same faded handkerchief Grandpa gave me on my 19th birthday. I'd never asked what it was for. He just said, "You'll need this someday when you're ready to claim yourself." That day had arrived. Langford Private Vault sat behind an unmarked door at the edge of the historic district, wedged between a boutique wine shop and a dusty old bookstore. The woman at the desk glanced at the key, checked something in her records, and without a word led me down a narrow, chilled corridor. The farther we went, the colder the air became until we reached a small room lined with metal drawers. "Box 18, she said, unlocking one and sliding it forward. I waited until she left before reaching inside. A sleek, black fireproof folder lay inside, its surface cool beneath my fingers. I opened it slowly. The first page was a certified cashier's check. This time real, the bank seal embedded into the paper, made out to me for $37 million. Beneath it were notarized land deeds transferring full ownership of the family estate's underlying property, followed by stock certificates for Fletcher Carroll Holdings, every voting share, every ounce of executive authority, already signed over to me. At the very bottom was a velvet pouch holding a second flash drive. Back home, I slid it into my laptop and opened the only file on it. Grandpa's face filled the screen. He looked older than I remembered, sitting in the sunroom with light spilling over his shoulder. "If you're seeing this, Clara," he began. "Then they did exactly what I feared, they tried to erase you." His voice was steady, deliberate. "You were always the quiet one. The one who saw everything, felt too much and asked for nothing. That's why they feared you. That's why I trusted you." He leaned in slightly, his eyes still sharp despite the years. "This isn't just money. It's memory. It's legacy. And if they've tried to burn yours down, this is how you come back." The screen faded to black, and I already knew exactly where I needed to go next. The envelope was taped just beneath the peephole on my apartment door. Plain white, no stamp, no return address, just one line typed in neat block letters. They didn't burn the real check. "Look in box array at Langford Security." No signature. No hint of who left it. Only the stillness of the hallway staring back at me when I opened the door. I sat at my table for a long while, just looking at it, my mind trying to run in a dozen directions at once, before I finally reached for my laptop. Langford had more than one vault site, and box array wasn't listed anywhere online, but I recognized the name immediately. Grandpa once joked it was where they hide the real bones. I logged into the estate email account he'd set up when the trust transferred and found a message I'd somehow missed before. No subject line. Just a single sentence. "They're not after the money. They're after the signature." Attached were 2 documents, both asset transfer forms for Fletcher Carroll Holdings. The first was unsigned. The second was filled out completely, my name neatly printed at the bottom. Except the signature wasn't mine. They'd forged it. They were selling the company. My stomach tightened as I opened the company's internal dashboard, the one Grandpa had given me access to months ago, and saw it all laid out in plain sight. Pending transactions, asset reassignments, every major move approved under my authority, while my legal status was still marked as deceased. I wasn't just being erased from the family. I'd been turned into a loophole, a silent signature they could move like a pawn. But arrogance leaves fingerprints, and theirs were everywhere. They thought I'd never see it, never come back. They were wrong. I pulled up Grandpa's flash drive again and clicked open a folder labeled Charleston Land Archives. My name appeared beside every single plot, and one address stood out. The leaseholder was F. D. Alder, a name Grandpa used for fishing licenses and antique record auctions, always laughing as he told me it meant Ravenwood, like a flower that grows where it's not supposed to. I thought about that as I drove past the city limits, through stretches of rusted farmland and forgotten industrial lots, until I found the place. A low row of storage units, weathered but solid. Number 20B opened with the small brass key from the velvet pouch. The stale air inside carried a faint trace of dust and metal, but I could tell it hadn't been abandoned. A single metal shelf lined the back wall, and right in the center sat a black fireproof briefcase, waiting like it knew I was coming. Inside was a manila folder holding my original birth certificate, not the updated one with my stepfather's surname, but the real one, Adele Fletcher. No hyphens, no alterations. Beneath it were 12 letters, each in Grandpa's distinct, steady handwriting, most dated within weeks of major family events. My college graduation, my parents' vow renewal, the Christmas I spent alone. Letters he'd written but never mailed. Over and over one line appeared. "They won't erase you, not while I'm still standing." At the bottom of the stack was a notarized will, dated after the official date of my supposed death. His signature strong and certain. In it I was named the sole beneficiary, not Lydia, not Rowan, not Elise. Me. And then I saw the deed. Fletcher Estate, Charleston, South Carolina. Full ownership in my name. My fingers brushed over the raised seal, and I realized I hadn't just inherited a house. I'd inherited the ground their power stood on. And they had no idea. I sat down on a cracked plastic chair near the unit door, clutching the folder to my chest, feeling the weight of my name like it had finally come home. I wasn't a ghost, and I was already stepping back through the door they thought they'd bolted shut. When I placed the briefcase in Tessa Barrett's hands, she didn't waste words. She flipped it open, scanned the contents with eyes sharp enough to cut, and simply said, "We'll move fast." There was no awe in her voice, only certainty. The kind of certainty that comes from seeing too many family wars where the paper trail carried the match. We filed the legal challenge within 72 hours, and by Friday the hearing was set for Monday. The courthouse smelled like wax floors and the kind of decisions that never leave. I wore black, not to mourn but because armor doesn't have to clang. My parents arrived together, flanked by a young lawyer whose suit fit like it belonged to someone else, wearing a smirk just loose enough to slip. Lydia trailed behind my parents, lips glossy, phone in hand, her gaze fixed anywhere but on me. Judge Mercer presided, sharp-eyed, brisk, and known for cutting through drama in record time. When our case was called, he gave a short nod toward Tessa. She rose with the same calm precision she'd had from the start. "We are here to contest the execution of the estate of Gideon Fletcher," she began, "on the grounds of forgery, coercion, and deliberate suppression of identity." The opposing lawyer leaned back and rolled his eyes. "Your Honor, my clients are the documented beneficiaries. Any attempt to revise the will posthumously is unfounded and entirely emotional." Tessa tapped her tablet, her voice steady. The deceased anticipated this. With a single click, the lights dimmed and the screen behind the bench flickered to life. Grandpa's face filled the frame. "If they're watching this," he said, "it means they tried to bury her." His voice was steady, unshaken. "Let the record show I changed my will knowingly, under no pressure. I made Adele the sole heir because she earned it, because she endured." The room froze. Lydia's lips parted, then closed again. My mother's complexion went pale, my father shifted in his seat, ready to speak, but Judge Mercer raised a hand. "Enough," he said, his tone cold as stone. "You didn't just attempt to manipulate this court. You tried to erase a person." He turned to me. "This court recognizes Adele Fletcher as the sole legal heir to Gideon Fletcher's estate. The respondent's assets are to be frozen pending further investigation." My exhale wasn't relief, it was release. The damage had been done. Now came the reckoning. Later, Lydia texted twice before I answered. The first message was one word: "Please." The second was longer: "Messier, can we talk? Just us? Like before." I agreed to meet her at a small cafe near the courthouse, neutral ground, no shared history. She was already there when I arrived, stirring a coffee she hadn't touched. Her smile trembled as I walked in. "I didn't know," she said quickly before I could sit. "About the death certificate. About the will. They told me it was just a routine form. I signed where Dad told me to." I set my phone on the table, screen dark but recording, and said nothing. "I swear, Clara, I didn't think they'd go that far," she continued, voice cracking. "I thought we were just protecting what was ours." "What was yours?" I repeated. She flinched. "I mean, I didn't think you'd fight. You always just left." That part at least was true. But I wasn't the girl who left anymore. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I was scared. If I didn't go along, they'd cut me out too." I watched her wipe a tear with the sleeve of her expensive coat. Maybe she did feel regret. I just didn't care. No threats. No anger. Just silence. I slid my phone into my pocket and stood. Her voice followed me halfway across the cafe, but I didn't look back. Outside, the air smelled faintly of distant rain. I pulled my coat tighter and walked. Not toward the past, not toward revenge, just forward. Waiting in my inbox was the final document Grandpa had left, marked in bold. Transfer of deed, effective upon confirmation. The courthouse steps were quieter than I'd imagined. No cameras, no confrontation, just the steady sound of my boots against old concrete as I descended. In my hand was the deed, my name printed in bold beneath the county seal. No more doubt. No more pretending. I paused at the last step and looked back at the building where I'd fought to be heard. I held the deed up, snapped a single photo. No smile. Just stillness. The caption was simple. "They tried to burn the legacy. I inherited the foundation." Then I shut my phone off and slipped it into my bag. No victory lap. No announcement. I walked 5 blocks in quiet to the small brick studio I'd closed on 3 days earlier. A modest space with tall windows and scuffed wooden floors, tucked between a florist and a fading laundromat. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and reached for the envelope Grandpa had left in the vault, the one marked "Start Here." Inside were 3 things. A hand-drawn sketch of the studio's floor plan, a folded business license application already half completed in his careful handwriting, and a letter with 4 words underlined, "Make something they can't erase." I sat cross-legged on the dusty floor, letting the weight of everything I'd lost and reclaimed settle around me like the quiet after a storm. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't even justice. It was the beginning, and I was ready to build. I spent the next few days in the studio with nothing but a folding chair, a stack of blank sketchpads, and Grandpa's last letter propped against the window. The city moved around me, cars, conversations, lives I wasn't part of, but inside it was quiet. Sacred, almost. I cleaned the floors by hand, painted the walls a soft, stubborn white, and taped design concepts to every surface like a teenager planning her escape. Except this time I wasn't running. I was planting roots. By the end of the week, I had a name for the space: Foundation. Not Fletcher Design. Not Adele Studios. Just Foundation, because that's what Grandpa had given me, and what they tried so hard to destroy. When the business license came through, I smiled without meaning to. Not the kind of smile you fake for a courtroom or a sister's apology, but the small, steady one that means you've reclaimed something no one can take again. Clients came slowly at first. A local artist looking for brand work. A nonprofit who needed a rebrand after a scandal. A woman who walked in with tear-smudged mascara and said, "I just want something new." I knew that feeling. I built logos and campaigns and visual identities, not for the money though it came, but for the story each person wanted to tell but didn't know how.